Hey guys, welcome to YouTube channel where hedging peso matters. For this discussion, bibigyan daan po natin ang ating segment na pinamagatang Hustisyang Masa. Pleasant day to everyone. For today, we'll be discussing about value-added tax. And what prompted me to discuss VAT is because of a comment that I received a few weeks back. And nakatanggap tayo na request na kung pwedeng i-discuss daw natin ang VAT and capital gains in detail. So, the VAT or the imposable tax will be different depending whether if we are selling in the ordinary course of business or if we are selling a capital asset. So for this, we have to now take note what capital gains tax is. Capital gains tax is a tax imposed on the gains presumed. Alright? So meron tayong presumed gain. So regardless whether ang pagbenta natin is kumita tayo or lugi tayo, we have to pay a capital gains. Alright? Magbabayad tayo in cases where there is a sale, exchange, or other disposition of capital assets. Capital assets pertain to a property held by the taxpayer. But take note, itong definition under the NIRC, it is in a negative form. Ang nakalagay, it does not include stock and trade included in the inventory of the taxpayer. Alright. Next, property held by the taxpayer primarily for sale to customers in the ordinary course of trade or business. So yung sinasabi ko before na VAT, in the ordinary course of trade or business siya binibenta. Also, number 3, property used in trade or business of a character which subjects the allowance for depreciation. So lahat ng ito, pang mga negosyo to. Itong ordinary assets. So example natin, house. Meron tayong bahay. And our house is not being used or not sold in the ordinary course of business. Syempre, bahay mo yon. Kasi hindi mo naman usual na binibenta ang bahay mo. So, this is considered as a capital asset. Kung capital asset siya, then it is subject to capital gains tax. To have a brief definition, capital assets is neither for sale in the ordinary course of business nor a property used in trade or business. So like our example, bahay, hindi naman siya ginagamit in our trade or business. Like I've mentioned, meron tayo babayaran na final tax of 6%. And we call this as the capital gains tax. The basis of the capital gains tax will be the gross selling price or the current FMV, fair market value, whichever is higher. So ang basis nito is on the presumed gains to have been realized from the sale, exchange, or other disposition of real property. Again, gross selling price and current fair market value, whichever is higher. So, ulitin ko po, presumed gains. Even though binenta natin siya lower than the current fair market value, magbabayad pa rin tayo ng capital gains tax or CGT of 6% kasi presumed gains. Meaning, hindi kinakailangan may actual nakita tayo for as long as nagbenta ka, regardless whether it is lower than the fair market value, we have to pay 6% CGT. Alright. Now, let's go on value-added tax. For those of you who are currently engaged into business, familiar sa inyo tong form na to. So, meron tayong quarterly VAT returns and meron din tayong monthly VAT return. So para mas maintindihan natin kung paano ba nag-ooperate itong VAT, kailangan natin of course ng illustration. Now, in this illustration, you can see a factory, manufacturer, a grocery store that is engaged in business, and the consumers. Of course, every time na magkakaroon ng bentahan, there is of course a money or a value that we have to pay. And in return, we are issued a receipt. And if we take a closer look dun sa resibo, may makikita tayong VAT na binayaran natin. Alright, so let's focus first in this scenario. So, the grocery store in this situation is a VAT-registered entity, meaning the aggregate amount of actual gross sales or receipts exceeded 3 million pesos. So kapag nag-exceed na po tayo ng 3 million pesos, then that person or entity is required to be registered as a VAT taxpayer. So ngayon, consumers went into the grocery store. Of course, bumili siya and he or she paid the equivalent value ng goods na natanggap niya. In return, merong resibong matatanggap. As you can see, meron tayong 12% VAT na binabayaran. Now, as you notice, meron tayong VAT exempt sale because by reason of senior citizen or by reason na PWD yung isang consumer, kaya may VAT exempt sale. But let's not deal with that. Now, ngayon, merong output tax. So, output tax is the VAT due on the sale or lease of taxable goods, properties, or services by a registered person. As we mentioned earlier, this grocery store is a VAT-registered entity. Yung goods na binebenta niya is may patong na 12% na binili ni consumer who shouldered the 12% VAT. So, yung goods na binili natin, may kasama na siyang output tax of 12%. Every time na bumibili tayo sa mga grocery stores that are engaged in trader business, may patong agad yan na 12%. Bakit ganito? Because VAT is an indirect tax. Ibig sabihin, yung tax liability na dapat si grocery store ang magbabayad is napapasa. The burden of paying the VAT is passed on to the buyer. So, tayo yung consumers, tayo yung nag-carry ng burden para bayaran yung VAT. In short, the tax liability falls on the grocery store and the impact of taxation is with the consumers. Now, let's deal with a situation kung saan ang nagbentahan ay parehas na VAT-registered entities. So, ang scenario ganito, once nagbenta si manufacturer ng goods kay grocery store, merong kaagad yung patong na 12%. So, makikita natin dito sa delivery receipt that this receipt is valid for claim of input taxes. So, every time na bumibili si grocery store kay manufacturer, makikita niya na dumadagdag ang mga input taxes niya by reason of its purchases. Why? Because input taxes are the taxes paid by a registered entity in the ordinary course of business. And in connection to our earlier example, once nagbenta si grocery store, meron itong output tax. And this output tax is being shouldered by the consumers. So technically, all of us are paying taxes. Kahit na 10-year-old kid lang tayo, we are still paying taxes by reason of the indirect tax that we are paying. So as a recap, output tax is the VAT due on the sale or lease of taxable goods, properties, or services by any registered person. So in this situation, parehas yung manufacturer and yung grocery store VAT-registered person. So in the event na bumili naman si manufacturer sa iba, meron siyang input tax na binabayaran. Because input tax is the VAT due from or paid by a registered person in the course of his trade or business on importation of goods or local purchases of goods, properties, or services from a VAT-registered person. So, ang importante dito is ang dalawang parties are parehas na VAT-registered person or VAT-registered entities para magkaroon ng significance itong input taxes and output taxes. Now, to illustrate, the manufacturer delivered goods to the grocery store. Yung goods na dineliver niya, of course, meron kasamang output tax because it is the VAT due on sale or lease of taxable goods or properties by a registered person. On the other hand, itong si grocery store naman, binayaran niya yung goods. And the amount paid by the grocery store includes the input tax. Because by definition, input tax is the VAT due paid by a registered person in the ordinary course of his trade or business on importation of goods or local purchases from a VAT-registered person. So in sum, si grocery store na VAT-registered entity ay bumili at nagbayad ng input tax sa isang VAT-registered entity rin. Here, as you can see, value added is the difference between the total sales for the taxable quarter, that is of course subject to VAT, and the total purchases for the same period that is subject to VAT. So, tinitignan natin yung difference dun sa total sales and sa total purchases. Alright. Let us first discuss this table on the left. Let us say, ang total sales natin amounts to 10,000. So, sa 10,000, of course, meron tayong 12% VAT na output tax. And our total purchases amounts to 8,000. So, itong total purchases natin, like we have mentioned a while ago, we have to pay input taxes kung VAT registered entity tayo. So, input taxes are the taxes paid by a VAT registered entity. So, in this scenario, meron tayong binayaran na 960. So, after determining these values, we have to get the difference between the output tax and the input tax in order for us to determine whether meron tayong VAT payable or excess input VAT. Now, if ang output tax natin ay mas malaki kaysa sa input tax natin, for sure meron tayong VAT payable. Ibig sabihin, meron tayong babayaran na VAT. Okay. On the other hand, kapag mas malaki naman ang input tax natin, ibig sabihin marami tayong pinamili. We have incurred a lot of input taxes by reason of our purchases and hindi tayo nakakapagbenta, then mas marami tayong input tax. So, tignan natin tong table sa right. See, our total sales amounts to 10,000 and yung output tax natin is 1,200. Ang total purchases natin amounts to 18,000. Marami tayong pinamili. So, the higher the purchases, the higher the input tax. Always remember. So, kapag mas mataas ang input tax natin, of course, sabi natin kanina, we get the difference. Ang lalabas dito is negative. So, meron tayong negative 960. So, meron ba tayong VAT payable? Wala. Wala po tayong babayaran na VAT. But instead, meron tayong excess input VAT na 960. Itong excess input tax na ito, we can claim this as a refund or tax credit certificate. I hope this video has been helpful to you. So if you find this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up. And of course, don't forget to like and comment. And of course, subscribe. And again, thank you.